The forest floor was slick with moss and rotting leaves, treacherous beneath Rogue's bare feet as she stumbled through the darkness. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale a knife to her ribs, each exhale a prayer she didn't have the faith to believe in. Behind her, the howls grew closer, her pack, her family, now her executioners. 7 months pregnant, her belly swollen and heavy, she pressed one hand beneath the curve to support the weight as she ran. The baby kicked frantically inside her, sensing her terror, and Rogue bit back a sob. "I'm sorry, little one. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you better." "There!" The shout came from her left, too close, and Rogue changed direction, branches whipping across her face and arms. Blood trickled down her cheek. Her thin cotton dress, the only thing she'd been wearing when they'd come for her, caught on thorns and tore. The night air bit into her exposed skin, raising goosebumps across her flesh, but she barely felt the cold through the adrenaline singing in her veins. She'd been naive to think Alpha Kane would let her leave quietly. Stupid to believe that when she'd begged him to release her from the pack, he'd simply let her walk away. The prophecy had changed everything. The seer's words echoed in her mind. The child will unite all packs under one ruler, or destroy them all in fire and blood. Kane wanted that power. He'd orchestrated her forced mating to one of his strongest warriors, had monitored her pregnancy with obsessive attention, and now that she'd tried to escape, he'd decided he didn't need her anymore, just the baby. Her foot caught on a root, and she went down hard, barely managing to twist, so she landed on her side instead of her stomach. Pain exploded through her hip and shoulder. For a moment she lay there, gasping, her vision swimming with tears and exhaustion. The baby rolled inside her, a firm pressure against her ribs that might have been a foot or an elbow. "Get up," she whispered to herself. "Get up, get up, get up." Hands fisted in the damp earth, Rogue dragged herself to her knees, then to her feet. Her legs shook. She'd been running for over an hour, and her body, heavy with pregnancy, weakened by the pack's careful rationing of her meals these past weeks, was failing. Through the trees ahead, she glimpsed the silhouette of a structure. An abandoned cabin, its roof half caved in, windows dark and empty. It wasn't much, but maybe she could hide, could catch her breath, could think of something, anything. She ran. The cabin door hung crooked on its hinges. Rogue shoved through into musty darkness that reeked of mold and animal droppings. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, illuminating a space that had once been someone's home. A broken table, a rusted iron stove, shattered glass scattered across warped floorboards. She turned in a circle, searching desperately for another exit, but there was only the door she'd entered through and the windows, and she could already hear them coming. The wolves burst from the tree line like shadows given teeth in fury. Rogue backed toward the far wall, one hand protectively cradling her belly, the other outstretched as if she could ward them off with her bare palm. Alpha Kane shifted first, his transformation smooth and practiced. He stood naked and unconcerned by his nudity, his body all corded muscle and cruel intent. The others followed, 6 warriors, her former packmates, people she'd eaten with and lived beside. Their eyes held no recognition now, no mercy. "Did you really think you could run from me?" Kane's voice was conversational, almost amused, as he stepped through the doorway. The cabin suddenly felt impossibly small. "From your alpha? From your family? You're not my family." Rogue's voice cracked, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Family doesn't... You can't... The child belongs to the pack." Kane moved closer, and the others fanned out behind him, blocking any path of escape. "We raised you, fed you, gave you purpose. This is how you repay us. This is your duty, Rogue. Her name is Maya." The words tore from her throat, fierce and desperate. She'd kept the name secret, hadn't told anyone, but she wanted someone to know, wanted her daughter's name to be spoken before. "Her name is Maya, and she's mine." Kane's laugh was sharp and cold. "She's a vessel for destiny, nothing more." He nodded to 2 of the warriors. "Hold her down." They moved fast, but Rogue was already scrambling backward, a scream building in her chest. Rough hands grabbed her arms, yanked her forward. She thrashed, kicked, bit down on someone's forearm until she tasted copper. The warrior yelped and backhanded her across the face. Stars exploded behind her eyes. "Carefully!" Kane barked. "Don't damage the cargo." They forced her down onto the filthy floor, one warrior pinning each arm, a third holding her legs. Rogue bucked and twisted, sobbing, as Kane knelt beside her and pulled a long silver blade from a key sheath at his hip. The metal gleamed in the moonlight, wickedly sharp. "Hold still," he said, almost kindly. "I've done this before, quick and clean, and then it will all be over." The blade descended toward her swollen belly. Rogue threw back her head and howled, not with her voice, but with something deeper, primal, a sound torn from the very marrow of her bones. It was a call she didn't understand, sent to someone she didn't know, a desperate plea flung out into the universe with the last shreds of her hope. "Save us! Please, someone, save us!" Glass exploded inward in a shower of glittering shards. The massive black wolf that crashed through the window was the largest Rogue had ever seen, easily twice the size of Alpha Kane's wolf form, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. Amber eyes blazed with inhuman intelligence and barely contained rage. The wolf's lips pulled back from fangs as long as Rogue's fingers, and the growl that rumbled from its chest made the floor vibrate. For one frozen heartbeat, everyone stared. Then the black wolf moved. It was butchery, brutal and efficient. The warrior holding Rogue's left arm died first, his throat torn out before he could even shift. The second lost his arm to those massive jaws. Rogue heard the bone crack, saw the blood spray. The wolf moved like liquid shadow, like violence given form, and the pack warriors scattered, some trying to shift, others trying to fight in human form. None of it mattered. Kane lunged forward with his silver blade, aiming for the wolf's exposed flank, but the creature twisted mid-strike and caught Kane's wrist in its teeth. The alpha screamed. The blade clattered to the floor. With a vicious shake of its head, the black wolf flung Kane across the cabin into the far wall. He hit with a sickening crunch and slid to the floor, groaning. The remaining warriors tried to run. The wolf was faster. Rogue curled on her side, arms wrapped around her belly as carnage unfolded around her. Blood splattered across her skin, warm and coppering. Screams cut short. The wet sounds of tearing flesh. Through it all, she kept her eyes fixed on a knot in the floorboards near her face, breathing in shaky gasps, trying to keep herself present, trying not to shatter completely. And then, silence. Heavy footsteps approached. Not paws, but human feet. Rogue's body locked with terror, unable to move, unable to look up. "Are you hurt?" The voice was deep, rough from disuse or violence, with an edge that suggested the speaker was barely holding on to control. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Rogue's body obeyed before her mind could process, her head tilting back, her gaze traveling up. The man stood over her, naked and magnificent and utterly terrifying. He was tall, powerfully built, with the kind of muscle that came from centuries of fighting. Because this was no ordinary wolf, Rogue knew it with absolute certainty. His skin bore scars that should have been impossible for a shifter to keep, marks of battles that had been legendary enough to leave permanent evidence. His hair was black as his wolf's fur, falling just past his shoulders, and his eyes, those burning amber eyes, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I asked if you were hurt." Each word was precise, controlled, but his hands trembled slightly at his sides, as if he wanted to reach for her and was forcibly restraining himself. Rogue's voice failed. She swallowed hard, tasted blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. "The baby. Is she?" "Let me see." He dropped to his knees beside her, and Rogue flinched instinctively. He froze, something like pain flickering across his harsh features. "I won't harm you. I could never." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "May I check?" She didn't understand his deference, his careful distance, but she nodded. His hands, massive and scarred, settled on either side of her belly with shocking gentleness. Heat radiated, from his palms, seeping through her thin dress, and Rogue gasped at the sensation. Not pain, but something else, something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. The baby kicked, a firm thump against his hand. The man's eyes widened. His throat worked as he swallowed. "Strong," he murmured. "She's strong." His gaze snapped up to Rogue's face. "You're both unharmed. Exhausted, terrified, but whole." He said it with certainty, as if he could sense her condition the way she could sense the moon. "Who are you?" Rogue whispered. His expression shifted into something possessive, hungry, and utterly devastating. "Canyon. Alpha King of the Northern Territories." His hands flexed against her belly, just slightly, a claiming gesture he seemed unaware of making. "And you, little wolf, are my mate." The world tilted. Rogue's vision grayed at the edges, darkness creeping in as the adrenaline finally drained away and left only shock and exhaustion. She heard Canyon curse, felt strong arms, lift her against a bare chest that radiated warmth like a furnace. His scent wrapped around her, pine and winter air and something wild, and despite everything, despite the impossibility of his claim, her wolf rose for the first time in months and purred with recognition. Mate. Safe. Home. "I've got you." Canyon's voice rumbled through his chest into her ear. "I've got you both. Sleep now. You're safe." And absurdly, impossibly, Rogue believed him. The darkness swallowed her whole. Rogue woke drowning in silk. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't place where she was. The fabric against her skin was too smooth, too soft, nothing like the rough cotton sheets of her Pax Omega quarters. The mattress beneath her felt like a cloud, and the pillow under her head smelled like pine and winter and something distinctly male. Memory crashed back. The chase. The cabin. Alpha Kane's blade descending toward her belly. The massive black wolf exploding through the window. Canyon. Rogue's eyes snapped open. She was in a bedroom unlike any she'd ever seen. The ceiling soared high above her, crossed with massive wooden beams that looked hewn from ancient trees. Tapestries hung on the stone walls, depicting wolves running beneath a full moon, battles between mythical creatures, scenes from a history she didn't know. A fire crackled in a fireplace large enough to stand in, casting dancing shadows across the space. The bed she lay in could have fit 6 people comfortably, draped in forest green silk and piled with furs that looked luxuriously soft. And beside the bed, in a chair that he'd pulled close, sat Canyon. He'd dressed in simple black pants and a loose white shirt, though the shirt hung open at the collar, revealing the column of his throat and the upper edge of a scar that ran across his collarbone. His black hair was pulled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his cheekbones and jaw. Those amber eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare despite being covered to her chin. "You're awake." His voice was softer than before, though no less commanding. "The healers said you would sleep for hours yet. Your body was near collapse." Rogue pushed herself up to sitting, wincing as her muscles protested. Her hand immediately went to her belly, and relief flooded through her when she felt the familiar weight, the slight movement of the baby within. "How long?" 6 hours. "It's past dawn now." Canyon leaned forward, elbows on his knees, watching her with predatory focus. "You're in my fortress, my personal chambers. I had the healers examine you here rather than in the medical wing. I didn't want you waking somewhere strange, surrounded by strangers." "Your chambers?" Rogue's heart hammered. She pulled the silk sheets higher, suddenly aware of her vulnerability. "I should... There must be somewhere else I can... No." The single word cracked through the air like a whip. Canyon's expression darkened, something possessive and dangerous flickering in his eyes before he visibly forced himself to soften. "What I mean is, you're safest here. With me. Until we understand what happened, why your pack was hunting you, you need to stay close." Rogue's laugh was sharp and brittle. "You know why. You heard Alpha Kane." She met his gaze defiantly, even as fear coiled in her gut. "There's a prophecy about my baby." that she'll unite all the packs or destroy them. Cain wanted to raise her as a weapon. I assume you want the same thing, so why pretend? I want you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and utterly shocking. Canyon stood abruptly, pacing to the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. The child is yours, which means she's under my protection. But you, Rogue, if that's even your real name, you are my mate. Do you understand what that means? It's not... Rogue's throat closed. My name is Rogue. They called me that because I was found as an infant, abandoned in the woods. No pack scent, no family. Alpha Cain took me in, but I was never really one of them. Just a stray they kept around for... She cut herself off, unable to voice the rest. The forced mating, the careful breeding program, the way they'd used her body like property. Canyon turned back to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. They hurt you. It wasn't a question. It doesn't matter now. Rogue forced the words out. What matters is, you said I'm your mate, but I'm carrying another man's child. That's impossible. Mates don't work that way. The child's father? Canyon's voice had gone cold again. Dangerous. Dead. Rogue swallowed hard. You killed him. In the cabin. He was one of the warriors. Something like savage satisfaction crossed Canyon's face. Good. He crossed back to her in 3 long strides, kneeling beside the bed so they were eye level. The child was conceived without your consent. Again, not a question. He somehow knew, could sense the truth the way he'd sensed her injuries earlier. Rogue looked away, shame burning through her. Does it matter? She is innocent. Canyon's hand lifted slowly, giving her time to pull back, before his fingers settled under her chin and gently turned her face toward his. And so are you. Whatever was done to you, it wasn't your fault. Your wolf knew. That's why she never bonded to him. Why the mate bond was waiting for me. Tears spilled down Rogue's cheeks before she could stop them. I don't understand. How can we be mates? How can the fates allow... The fates work in their own time. Canyon's thumb brushed away her tears with devastating tenderness. I'm over 300 years old, Rogue. I've waited centuries for you, believed I was cursed to walk alone forever. And then I heard your howl, his voice roughened with emotion, felt your terror through a bond I didn't know existed. My wolf knew you, recognized you, and nothing on this earth could have stopped me from reaching you. 300 rogues. Mind reeled. Canyon was ancient, one of the first wolves, a living legend. And he was claiming her? An Omega nobody with no pack, no family, no value except for the prophesied child in her womb? I know this is overwhelming. Canyon's hand dropped from her face, though she could see the effort it cost him to break contact. You've been through hell. You need time to heal, to feel safe. I'm not asking you to accept the bond today, but I need you to understand. You and your child are under my protection now. You belong to me, and I belong to you. Anyone who tries to harm you will face my wrath. The fierce declaration should have terrified her. Instead, Rogue felt something unfurl in her chest, warm and tentative. Hope, maybe, or the first fragile threads of trust. The prophecy, she began, can wait. Canyon stood, putting deliberate distance between them, as if he didn't trust himself too close. Right now, you need food, rest, and safety. My pack will not harm you. This fortress is warded. With magic older than most kingdoms, you're safe here. His amber eyes burned into hers. I swear it on my life and throne. You are safe, little wolf. Rogue's hand settled protectively over her belly, and she felt the baby shift, settling, as if she too recognized the truth in Canyon's words. Against all logic, against every lesson her harsh life had taught her, Rogue found herself nodding. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Canyon's answering smile transformed his harsh features into something devastating. Rest now. I'll have food brought up. We can talk more when you're stronger. He moved toward the door, but Rogue's voice stopped him. Canyon? He turned back, eyebrows raised. Thank you. For saving us. His expression softened into something tender and possessive. Always, mate. Always. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Canyon's chambers, and Rogue found herself alone in the massive bed, wrapped in silk sheets that still carried his scent. 3 days had passed since she'd woken in this room, and each morning began the same way. Canyon's absence, replaced by a tray of food that appeared while she slept, and the lingering warmth on the other side of the bed that told her he'd been there, watching over her through the night. She pushed herself up carefully, one hand supporting her belly. The baby, Maya, she reminded herself fiercely, her name is Maya, rolled and stretched, a firm pressure against her ribs that made Rogue wince and smile simultaneously. Good morning to you too, little one, she murmured. A soft knock preceded the door opening. Canyon entered carrying another tray, and Rogue's breath caught the way it did every time she saw him. He'd changed into dark leather pants and a deep green tunic that made his amber eyes seem to glow. His black hair was loose today, falling past his shoulders, and she found herself wondering what it would feel like to run her fingers through it. The thought sent guilt crashing through her chest. She had no right to think of him that way, not when her belly was swollen with another man's child. You're awake earlier today. Canyon set the tray on the small table near the window, then turned to her with that intensity that made her feel like she was the only thing in his world. How did you sleep? Well, the truth. She'd slept better in these 3 days than she had in months. You don't have to bring me food yourself. I'm sure you have. There must be servants, people who... I want to. He crossed to her, offering his hand to help her from the bed. Let me take care of you, Rogue, please. The plea in his voice undid her. She placed her hand in his, feeling the now familiar jolt of heat that arced between them at every touch. Canyon's fingers tightened around hers, and for a moment they simply stood there, connected, while something unspoken and powerful hummed in the air between them. Then the baby kicked, hard enough that Rogue gasped, and Canyon's other hand moved instinctively to her belly, steadying her. His palm spread wide over the curve, and Maya kicked again, directly into his touch. Canyon's expression transformed into something wondering, tender, and fiercely possessive all at once. She's strong. Active. That's good. His thumb stroked absently across the fabric of the nightgown someone had dressed Rogue in while she slept that first day. Have you eaten yet? No. I just woke up. Rogue was acutely aware of his hand still resting on her belly, the heat of it seeping through the thin fabric. Canyon, we should talk about after breakfast. His tone left no room for argument. You need to eat, both of you. Then we can talk about whatever you want. He guided her to the table, pulling out a chair and waiting until she sat before taking the seat across from her. The tray held more food than she could possibly eat. Fresh bread still warm from the oven, honey and butter, sliced fruit, cheese, and what looked like some kind of meat pie. Her stomach growled despite her anxiety. Canyon smiled, something warm and satisfied crossing his features. Eat, little wolf. She did, and he watched her with those unblinking amber eyes, radiating contentment just from seeing her fed. It should have been uncomfortable, being watched so intently, but instead, Rogue found herself relaxing, the tension she'd carried for months slowly unwinding under his steady regard. The healers want to examine you again today, Canyon said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. Make sure you and the baby are recovering from the stress of... His jaw tightened. From what happened? I'm fine. Rogue set down her bread. Really, I feel better than I have in months. Your healers are very skilled. They're the best in any territory. Pride colored his voice. I've spent centuries gathering knowledge, learning healing arts from every culture. My pack wants for nothing, least of all medical care. He leaned forward slightly. But I'd feel better if they checked you, for my own peace of mind. The vulnerability in that admission made her chest tighten. All right, if it will make you feel better. Thank you. Canyon stood, offering his hand again. Come, I'll show you more of the fortress. You've been confined to this room long enough. The fortress was enormous, a sprawling complex of stone and wood that seemed to have been carved from the mountain itself. Canyon led her through corridors lined with tapestries and torches, past rooms whose purposes she could only guess at, until they emerged into a library that stole her breath. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, 3 stories of them, with ladders on rails to reach the upper shelves. Comfortable chairs clustered near a massive fireplace, and tall windows let in streams of sunlight that made the dust motes dance like tiny stars. The smell of old paper and leather and knowledge wrapped around her like an embrace. Oh, Rogue breathed, turning in a slow circle. I've never seen so many books. Do you like to read? Canyon watched her face, and she wondered what he saw there. Wonder, hunger, yearning. I don't know. She touched the spine of the nearest book reverently. Alpha Cain didn't allow the Omegas to learn. He said we didn't need education, just obedience. The old shame tried to rise, but she pushed it down. I know my letters, enough to read simple things, but nothing like this. Then I'll teach you. Canyon moved beside her, pulling a book from the shelf. Or have someone teach you, if you'd prefer. Everything in this library is yours, Rogue. Everything in this fortress is yours. You're my mate, which makes you... He stopped, something uncertain crossing his features for the first time since she'd met him. I'm getting ahead of myself. Forgive me. Rogue took the book from his hands, their fingers brushing. The title meant nothing to her. The words were too complex, but the weight of it felt precious. What does it make me? Mine. The word came out rough, possessive. My mate. My Luna. Eventually, when you're ready, my queen. He took a breath, visibly steadying himself. But I'm not asking for that now. I just want you to be safe. To heal. To trust me. Trust. Such a simple word for something she'd never been allowed to have. Rogue clutched the book to her chest, her eyes burning with unshed tears. Why are you being so kind to me? Kind? Canyon's laugh was sharp with disbelief. Rogue, you're my mate, the other half of my soul. I would burn the world to ash if it meant keeping you safe. This isn't kindness, it's devotion. It's need. It's... He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I'm trying to give you space, to not overwhelm you. But my wolf is fighting me every moment, demanding I claim you, mark you, bind you to me so completely that you could never be taken away. Do you understand how much control it's taking to just stand here talking when everything in me is screaming to... He stopped, breathing hard, and Rogue saw the way his hands shook before he fisted them at his sides. To what? The question emerged barely above a whisper. Canyon's eyes bled to black, his wolf rising to the surface. To touch you, to taste you, to worship every inch of your body until you forget you were ever afraid, until all you know is pleasure and safety and mine. His voice had gone guttural, inhuman. But you carry a child conceived in violence, and you barely know me, and I will not, become another male who takes from you without permission. The book slipped from Rogue's hands, landing on the thick carpet with a muffled thump. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and heat pooled low in her belly. Desire sharp and unexpected and terrifying because she'd never felt it before. The forced mating with Cain's warrior had been mechanical, painful, something to endure. This, what she felt looking at Canyon's barely controlled need, was entirely different. What if I gave permission? The words escaped before she could stop them. Canyon went utterly still, every muscle locked. Don't say that unless you mean it. My control is... I'm barely holding on as it is. I don't... Rogue wrapped her arms around her belly, the child within. I shouldn't want this. Want you. Not like this. Not when I'm... carrying a child. Canyon moved closer, slowly, giving her time to retreat. She didn't. A child I've already claimed as mine. A child I will raise and protect and love because she's yours, Rogue. She could be anyone's blood and it wouldn't matter. She's innocent and she's yours, which makes her precious beyond measure. How can you say that? The tears spilled over now, hot tracks down her cheeks. How can you want someone so used, so broken? You're not broken. Canyon's hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. You're wounded. There's a difference. And I have waited 300 years for you. Do you think a child, an innocent life, would make me want you less? Do you think anything could? His forehead pressed against hers, and Rogue's eyes fluttered closed at the intimacy of it. I have fought wars, little wolf, built kingdoms and watched them fall, buried friends and enemies alike, and in all those centuries, I have never felt what I feel when I look at you. This bond between us is sacred, ordained by the fates themselves. Nothing can diminish it. I'm scared. The confession tore from her. I'm so scared of feeling this, of wanting you, because no one has ever. I know. His breath ghosted across her lips, and she trembled. I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt. But I swear to you, on my life and throne and the moon herself, I will never harm you. I will never take what isn't freely given. And if all you can give me is your presence, your company, your trust, that will be enough. It will have to be enough, because losing you is not an option I can survive. Rogue's hands lifted of their own accord, settling on his chest. She could feel his heart hammering beneath her palms, as wild and fast as her own. What if I want to give you more? Then I will thank the fates every day for the rest of my existence. Canyon's voice roughened. But not yet. Not when you're still healing. Not when we've barely known each other a week. The restraint in his voice was painful to hear. Let me court you properly. Let me show you what it means to be cherished. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll take that step together. It was the right answer, the respectful answer. And Rogue both loved him for it and wanted to scream with frustration. Because her body was awakening in ways she'd never experienced, nerve endings coming alive under his touch, and the pregnancy hormones weren't helping her rationality at all. But Canyon was right. She needed time, needed to heal, to learn to trust, to separate the violation of her past from the possibility of her future. Okay, she whispered. Court me then. Show me. Canyon's smile was brilliant and boyish and devastatingly beautiful. It would be my honor. He stepped back, putting careful distance between them, and Rogue immediately mourned the loss of his warmth. Come, let me introduce you to more of the pack. They're eager to meet their future Luna. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that Rogue had never experienced before. Peaceful, gentle, almost dreamlike. Canyon was constantly present, but never overwhelming, bringing her meals and sitting with her for hours as they talked about everything and nothing. He told her stories of his long life, of battles fought and won, of the weight of leadership and the loneliness of immortality. She found herself sharing pieces of her own history, the scattered memories she had from before Kane's pack, the dreams she'd harbored secretly of freedom and choice. The pack treated her with respect that bordered on reverence. They called her Luna even though she and Canyon hadn't completed the mating bond, and they brought her gifts, soft blankets, books, with simple words she could practice reading, carved toys for the baby that made her throat tight with emotion. But it was Canyon's attention that undid her, bit by bit, day by day. He walked with her through the fortress gardens, his hand steady at the small of her back, as she waddled between the raised beds of herbs and flowers. He sat with her in the library, reading aloud from books of poetry and history, his deep voice wrapping around her like a caress. He sparred with his warriors in the training yard while she watched from a shaded balcony, and the raw power and grace of his movements made her mouth go dry. And every night, he slept on a chaise in the corner of his chambers while she took the massive bed, though she woke sometimes to find him standing by the window, watching the forest, as if waiting for threats only he could sense. The sexual tension between them grew like a living thing, thick and electric. Canyon's eyes tracked her movements with barely restrained hunger. His hands lingered when he helped her stand or steadied her on the stairs. And Rogue found herself hyper-aware of him, of the way his muscles shifted under his shirts, of the sound of his breathing, of the way he said her name like a prayer. She was 8 months pregnant, carrying another man's child, and she wanted Canyon with a ferocity that terrified her. It was late one evening, 2 weeks after her arrival, when everything changed. They sat in the library, Canyon reading while Rogue practiced her letters, copying sentences from a children's primer. The fire crackled softly, and outside the windows, the moon rose full and silver. A younger pack member, one of Canyon's warriors, barely 20 with sandy hair and an eager smile, entered carrying a tray of tea. Alpha, I brought— Oh! He caught sight of Rogue and his eyes widened with appreciation. Luna, you look lovely tonight. That color suits you. It was an innocent compliment. The dress she wore was a soft blue that one of the pack's women had altered to fit her pregnant frame. But Canyon's reaction was anything but innocent. A growl ripped from his chest, so deep and primal that it made the windows rattle. The warrior dropped to his knees immediately, head bowed, throat bared in submission. Canyon was on his feet in a heartbeat, moving between Rogue and the terrified younger wolf, his body vibrating with barely controlled rage. Get out. Each word was carved from ice and fury. The warrior fled. Rogue's heart hammered as she stared at Canyon's rigid back, at the way his shoulders heaved with each breath. Canyon? Don't. He didn't turn around. Don't say anything. I need a moment to— He was looking at you, complimenting you, and my wolf wanted to tear his throat out for daring to even speak to you. His hands fisted at his sides. This is getting worse. Being near you without claiming you is driving me mad. I don't trust myself around other males when they get too close to you. Rogue stood slowly, her hand pressed to her belly. Fear warred with something else. A primal feminine satisfaction that this powerful male wanted her so desperately. Then maybe you should stop fighting it. Canyon spun to face her, his eyes bleeding black. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? She moved toward him, each step deliberate despite her ungainly waddle. You've been so careful, so respectful, giving me space and time. But Canyon, I'm going insane too. I want you, I dream about you, and I'm tired of being afraid of my own desires. Rogue. Her name came out strangled. You're 8 months pregnant. You've been through hell. We should wait until— Until when? Until after the baby comes? Until some arbitrary amount of time has passed? She stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. I'm tired of waiting for permission to want something. Someone. I'm tired of letting my past dictate my future. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. I want you, Canyon. I want my mate, and I'm saying yes. I'm giving permission. So unless you don't want me, don't want you. Canyon's laugh was harsh and desperate. I would carve out my own heart and offer it to you on a platter if you asked. I would wage war against the gods themselves for one touch, one kiss, one moment of you choosing me freely. But I need you to be sure. I need you to understand that once I start, I won't want to stop. That my wolf will demand I mark you, claim you, bind us so completely that— I'm sure. Rogue lifted up on her toes, as much as her pregnant belly would allow, and pressed her lips to his. For one heartbeat, Canyon remained frozen. Then he shattered. His arms came around her, careful of her belly, pulling her as close as their bodies would allow. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, like she was salvation and damnation, and everything in between. His mouth moved over hers with barely restrained hunger, coaxing her lips apart, tasting her with a thoroughness that made her knees buckle. Canyon caught her, lifting her into his arms, as if she weighed nothing despite her pregnancy. He carried her to the chaise, settling her carefully on his lap so she straddled him, her belly pressed between them. Tell me if anything hurts. Tell me if you need me to stop. Promise me. I promise. Her hands threaded through his hair, finally, and it was as soft as she'd imagined. Don't stop. Please don't stop. Never. His mouth found the curve of her neck, kissing and sucking and carefully, deliberately, not yet marking. My perfect mate. My beautiful rogue. Mine. Yours, she gasped as his hands stroked up her sides, careful of her sensitive breasts, mapping her body with reverent touches. Canyon. I need. A deafening alarm shattered the moment. Canyon was on his feet instantly, setting Rogue behind him, his body a protective shield. Through the windows she could see pack members running, torches lighting, the organized chaos of a fortress. Under threat. Marcus, Canyon's second in command, a grizzled warrior with silver threaded through his brown hair, burst through the door. Alpha, council members have arrived, 5 alphas with their entourages, all demanding entrance and an audience. They're armed for war. Canyon's expression went cold and deadly. Send them to the throne room. Full guard. No one enters without being searched for weapons and magic. He glanced back at Rogue. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. What's happening? Fear clawed up her throat. They've come for you. Canyon's hand cupped her face briefly, thumb stroking across her cheekbone. For the prophecy. But I'll die before I let them take you. He kissed her hard and fast, a promise and a claim. Stay here. Trust me. Then he was gone, striding from the library with Marcus at his heels, and Rogue was left standing alone, her lips still tingling from his kiss, while outside the fortress prepared for battle. She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling Maya kick anxiously. It's okay, little one, she whispered, not believing it at all. Canyon will protect us, he promised. But as she moved to the window and saw the assembled forces below, 5 separate pack contingents, easily 200 wolves, all armed and ready, she couldn't shake the feeling that their fragile peace was about to shatter completely. The prophecy had come calling. And this time, Canyon might not be able to save her. The mate bond was a living thing, a silver thread that stretched across miles and territories, pulsing with Rogue's fear and pain. Canyon felt every spike of her terror like a blade to his chest, every whimper of pain like acid in his veins. She was alive. That knowledge was the only thing keeping him from descending into complete madness, but she was suffering, and every second that passed without her in his arms was agony. He stood in the fortress's war room, maps spread across the massive table, his most trusted warriors assembled around him. Marcus had sent runners to every pack that owed Canyon allegiance or blood debt, and they'd answered with a speed that spoke to either loyalty or fear. Both worked. The witch's magic masks their exact location, Marcus said, pointing to a section of forest that encompassed nearly 50 square miles, but we've narrowed it to this region, the old territory of the Shadowfang pack, Rogue's birth pack. Canyon's voice came out guttural, his wolf too close to the surface. His hands gripped the table's edge hard enough that the wood cracked beneath his fingers. They took her home to die. We have 300 warriors ready to march, another commander reported. Another 100 will arrive by nightfall. We leave now. Canyon straightened, and every wolf in the room felt the weight of his dominance press down like a physical force. Send scouts ahead. Anyone who stands between me and my mate dies. Any pack that offers them shelter burns. Spread the word. Join me or be destroyed. There is no middle ground. Through the bond, he felt Rogue's consciousness flicker, a wave of exhaustion and pain that made his vision go dark at the edges. She was weakening. The baby, their baby, because she was his now, his to protect and raise and love, was in danger. Alpha. Marcus's hand landed on his shoulder, the only wolf brave enough to touch him when his control was this fractured. We'll get her back. I swear it. If we don't... Canyon's voice broke. If I lose her, Marcus, if I'm too late, you won't be. Marcus's grip tightened. The moon herself brought you two together. Trust in that. Trust in her strength. Canyon nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound of rage and promise and desperate love that echoed across the territories. His pack answered, hundreds of voices joining his, and Canyon felt the bond pulse with Rogue's recognition. I'm coming, little wolf. Hold on. Just hold on. They encountered resistance at the border of the Ironwood territory. a pack that had long resented Canyon's rule and saw an opportunity in his desperation. 20 warriors blocked the road, their alpha standing in the center with a smug smile. "Stand aside," Canyon growled, still in human form though his eyes bled black. "I have no quarrel with you." "The prophecy child belongs to all packs," the Ironwood Alpha declared. "Not to one king and his whore." He didn't get to finish. Canyon's shift was instantaneous, his massive black wolf form covering the distance in a single leap. The Alpha's throat tore out in a spray of arterial blood, and Canyon didn't stop, didn't slow, tearing through the warriors with a brutality that left no room for mercy. His pack flooded in behind him, and the fight was over in minutes. Canyon shifted back, blood dripping from his naked body, and addressed the surviving Ironwood wolves with cold fury. "Your Alpha chose poorly. You have a choice: join me now or follow him to death. Decide quickly." They knelt, all of them, and Canyon's army grew. The same scene played out twice more as they marched through the night. Packs that thought to capitalize on the situation learned swiftly that Canyon's mercy had limits, and those limits ended where Rogue's safety began. By the time the new moon rose, dark and pregnant with power, Canyon led a force of over 500 wolves, united by either loyalty or survival instinct. And through it all, the bond pulsed with Rogue's weakening heartbeat, driving him forward with single-minded determination. They reached the territory borders of what had once been Shadowfang land as midnight approached. The pack had dissolved years ago, absorbed into larger territories, but the land remembered. Magic clung to the trees here, old and dark, the kind that required blood sacrifice to maintain. Canyon scouts returned with grim news. "There's a structure underground, hidden by wards. We can sense movement, but can't penetrate the magic." Then I go alone. Canyon was already moving, stripping off his clothes, preparing to shift. The wards are keyed to large forces. One wolf, using old magic, can slip through. "Alpha, that's suicide. That's an order." Canyon's eyes flashed. "Wait for my signal. If I'm not out with Rogue by dawn, burn it all to the ground and dig her out of the ashes." He shifted before anyone could argue, his black wolf melting into the shadows of the new moon. The ancient magic that ran through his veins, power accumulated over 3 centuries of life and battle, cloaked him like a second skin. He moved as a ghost through the forest, following the bond's pull, until he found the entrance, a hidden door in the side of a hill, carved with runes that made his fur stand on end. Guards stood at the entrance, 6 wolves in human form, armed and alert. Canyon killed them in silence, his jaws crushing windpipes before they could shout warnings. He dragged the bodies into the shadows and descended into the earth. The tunnels reeked of old blood and darker magic. Torches lined the walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe with malevolent life. Canyon's claws clicked softly against stone as he moved deeper, his senses extending outward, searching for Rogue's scent beneath the layers of corruption. More guards, more silent deaths. His muzzle was wet with blood by the time he reached the lower levels, where the tunnels opened into worked chambers. And there, through a doorway reinforced with silver bars, he saw her. Rogue hung from silver chains that suspended her arms above her head, her feet barely touching the ground. Her pregnant belly jutted forward, straining against the thin shift that was her only clothing. Bruises mottled her skin, arms, legs, her face swollen on one side. But she was alive, conscious, her head lifting as if she could sense him even through his magical concealment. Canyon's vision went black with rage. His wolf and man merged into something primal and murderous, unified in singular purpose. The guards outside her cell never stood a chance. He tore through them like they were made of paper, his roar of fury finally shattering his concealment. The compound erupted into chaos. Wolves poured from adjoining chambers, but Canyon was a force of nature, unstoppable, carving a path of destruction toward his mate. He shifted mid-stride, his human hands reaching for the cell door, ancient magic burning away the wards that locked it. Rogue's eyes widened as he stepped inside, and Canyon saw the moment she truly recognized him, not just as her mate, but as something more. Something savage and unbreakable and utterly devoted to her survival. Canyon. His name on her lips was prayer and relief and desperate hope. I've got you. He reached for the chains, his hands closing around the silver, despite the way it burned his flesh. I've got you, little wolf. You're safe now. I'll. A door he hadn't noticed slammed open, and the dark witch swept into the cell, power crackling around her like lightning. She was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes solid black with corrupted magic. Too late, Alpha King. Her voice scraped like bones against stone. The ritual is already prepared, the new moon is at its peak, and the prophecy's power will be mine. She raised her hands, and Rogue screamed, a sound of pure agony that drove Canyon to his knees. Through the bond, he felt it, labor, forced artificially early by the witch's magic, ripping through Rogue's body like fire. No. Canyon lunged for the witch, but invisible force slammed him backward into the cell wall. Silver chains erupted from the stone, wrapping around his wrists and ankles, binding him in place. He roared, fighting against them, his blood smoking where the silver touched skin. Stop! You'll kill them both! What do I care? The witch moved toward Rogue, pulling a curved blade from her robes. The power resides in the child. The mother is just a vessel, and you, mighty king, are just a witness. She raised the blade, aiming for Rogue's swollen belly. Watch your mate die, Alpha. Watch everything you love turn to. Light exploded through the chamber. Rogue's scream transformed into something else, something powerful and primal and utterly inhuman. White light poured from her skin, so bright Canyon had to shield his eyes. The silver chains shattered like glass, falling away in glittering shards, and Rogue shifted. It should have been impossible. Shifting during labor was a death sentence, the kind of trauma no wolf could survive. But Rogue's wolf form was unlike anything Canyon had ever seen. Pure silver, from her fur to her eyes, glowing with an inner light that pushed back the witch's corrupted magic like dawn burning away darkness. She was magnificent, she was terrifying, and she was his. The silver wolf's jaws closed around the witch's throat before the old woman could even scream. They went down in a tangle of fur and robes and spraying blood. The witch's magic sputtered and died as Rogue tore her apart with savage efficiency, her wolf operating on pure protective instinct. The chains binding Canyon dissolved as the witch's death broke her spells. He shifted, his black wolf form leaping into the fray, as more of Rogue's former pack members flooded into the chamber, drawn by the commotion. They saw their chance, both alphas distracted, the child about to be born, and attacked as a coordinated unit. But Canyon and Rogue moved as one, their mate bond creating a connection that made them fight like extensions of the same body. Where Canyon struck, Rogue defended. Where Rogue lunged, Canyon covered her flank. They were devastating together, their combined power amplified beyond what either could achieve alone. And then Rogue's wolf form flickered, and she shifted back to human with a cry of pain. Canyon saw her belly contract, saw the way she doubled over, and his heart stopped. Labor, real and unstoppable now, was claiming her. Canyon! Her voice broke on his name, terror and pain bleeding through. He shifted instantly, his human form positioning itself between Rogue and the remaining attackers. Power exploded from him, the ancient magic of his bloodline, honed over centuries, crystallizing into a barrier of pure force that surrounded Rogue like a dome. Claws and teeth met the barrier and bounced off, unable to penetrate. Breathe, little wolf. Canyon's voice was steady even as he faced down a dozen wolves, even as his hands glowed with the effort of maintaining the protective shield. I've got you. Just breathe through it. A wolf lunged at his exposed back, and Canyon spun, his clawed hand opening the attacker's belly in one smooth motion. Another came from the side. He caught it by the throat and slammed it into the stone floor hard enough to crack bone. Blood painted the chamber walls as he killed with brutal efficiency, each strike calculated to end threats without breaking his concentration on the barrier protecting his laboring mate. Behind him, Rogue's breathing turned to harsh pants, then to screams she tried to muffle. It's too fast. Something's wrong. Canyon, I can't. Yes, you can. He killed 2 more wolves, their bodies falling in tangled heaps. You're strong. You're powerful. You're mine, and my mate doesn't break. Another wolf died, gurgling on its own blood. The baby's coming. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Trust yourself. The last three attackers hesitated, seeing their packmates dead around them, seeing the Alpha King standing bloodied and unbreakable, his eyes blazing with protective fury. They broke and ran, scrambling up the tunnel toward the surface. Canyon let them go. His attention was already turning inward, to the bond, to Rogue's spike of pain and fear. He dropped the barrier and was at her side in an instant, his blood-covered hands settling on her belly, feeling the contractions rolling through her. Too fast, she sobbed, curling onto her side. Canyon, it's too fast. The magic forced it. She's not ready. She's ready. Canyon positioned himself behind her, his body supporting hers, one hand splaying across her belly while the other gripped her hand. The magic just sped up what was already close. You're at 8 months, Rogue. She can survive this. You can survive this. He pressed his lips to her temple, feeling her shaking. I'm here. I've got you both. Now push when your body tells you to. Let me worry about everything else. Rogue's scream echoed off the stone walls as the next contraction hit, and Canyon breathed through it with her, murmuring encouragement and promises against her sweat-soaked skin. Around them, the chamber was painted in blood and death, the witch's body cooling near the wall, the fallen pack members scattered like broken dolls. But in the center of the carnage, Canyon and Rogue created their own space, intimate, sacred, filled with life instead of death. I can't. Rogue's voice broke as another contraction seized her. I can't do this. You already are. Canyon shifted them carefully, helping her into a better position, his hands steady and sure. You killed a witch mid-labor, little wolf. You shifted impossibly. You're the strongest person I've ever known. His hand slid lower, checking, and his breath caught. I can feel her head. She's almost here. One more, maybe two. Come on, mate. Bring our daughter into the world. Our daughter! The words wrapped around Rogue's heart, gave her strength when she thought she had none left. She bore down with the next contraction, her scream turning to a growl, her silver eyes flashing with wolf light. Canyon supported her completely, his body a wall of strength at her back, his voice steady as he coached her through each push. And then, a cry. Small and furious and absolutely perfect. Canyon's hands caught the tiny body, slick with blood and vernix, impossibly small and warm and alive. Tears blurred his vision as he brought the baby around, settling her on Rogue's chest, and his heart cracked open completely at the sight of them together, his mate and his child, bloodied and exhausted and beautiful beyond words. Maya, Rogue sobbed, her shaking hands coming up to cradle the infant. Her name is Maya. Is she okay? She's perfect. Canyon's voice broke as he used his claw to carefully cut the cord, completing the separation. His hand covered Rogue's, helping support the baby's tiny head. Look at her. Just look at her. Maya's eyes opened, unfocused but searching, and Canyon's breath stopped. One eye was amber, his color, his wolf's color. The other was silver, matching Rogue's transformed wolf form. Heterochromatic and impossible, and absolutely theirs. The prophecy activated in that moment, a pulse of power that exploded outward from the baby in rippling waves. Canyon felt it wash through him, through Rogue, through the stone walls of the chamber, and up into the world above. Every alpha in every territory felt it. Like a shockwave, the unquestionable truth of the prophecy fulfilled. This child is the promised one. These are her parents. This is the new order. Canyon gathered Rogue and Maya into his arms, holding them both as carefully as he'd ever held anything, and pressed his forehead to Rogue's temple. My family, he breathed. My mate and my daughter. Mine to protect and love and cherish. His hand stroked over Maya's tiny head, marveling at the soft down of dark hair. I claim her as mine. From first breath, blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh. Yours, Rogue agreed, exhausted and radiant, her eyes fixed on their daughter's face. Ours. She's ours, Canyon. Above them, the new moon gave way to the first hints of dawn. Light filtered down through the chamber's entrance, illuminating the three of them in gentle gold: a king, a queen, and the princess who would unite them all. The prophecy was fulfilled. The true royal family was born, and anyone who dared threaten them would learn exactly what two bonded mates would do to protect their own. The war was over, the new era had begun.